Hello everyone, and thank you for attending our webinar, 4 Ways Replacing AV with the Security Platform Can Help You. I am your host, Mindy Stubbs, Demand Generation Coordinator here at Optiv. Before we get started, a few items of housekeeping. First, this webinar is being recorded and will be available in the next few days for on-demand viewing. You can see here on the console that we have several resources you can use during or following the webinar. This includes some resources we think you'll find valuable when it comes to your security program. We have our full speaker bios, social sharing buttons, and a Q&A chat box. You'll also find all these same widgets on your toolbar as you scroll to the bottom of your screen. Regarding the Q&A chat box, we will have someone monitoring the chat box throughout the Q&A period. However, we may not get to every question. If we don't answer your question, we will follow up after the webinar. Let me take a quick moment to introduce our speakers, Walt Powell and David Gruber. Walt Powell is a cybersecurity visionary with over 10 years of experience providing executive advisory and IT security thought leadership services. Over the years, Walt has provided architectural and design support for a varied set of security solutions and has assisted clients with every aspect of security. In his current role with Optiv, Walt assists a variety of Fortune 500 companies by aligning their security programs and risk strategies with their business goals. David Gruber is Vice President of Product Marketing at Carbon Black, where he is responsible for creating market awareness for Carbon Black's industry-leading product and for developing the positioning, messaging, and go-to-market strategy for the introduction of new products into the market. David brings over 25 years of high-growth software company product leadership, most recently joining Carbon Black in May 2017 from Black Duck Software, where he was the Vice President of Products, responsible for driving product strategy, product management, and product marketing for securing the use of the open source software. David lives and works in the Boston area. With that, I will hand it over to our first speaker, Walter.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Mindy. My name is Walt Powell. Today we're going to take a look at a few things here. We're going to talk about some of the modern attacks, things that we see in the threat landscape, and how those are presenting challenges to companies. Then we're going to take a look at the Carbon Black Predictive Security Cloud, and understand what it does and how it might provide value and how it can help you meet some of those challenges. We'll look through some of those results, and at the end, like she said, we'll leave time at the end for Q&A, and we'll try and answer all of your questions. If we can't get to all of your questions, we will answer them after. Feel free to ask questions throughout the course of this webinar. However, we won't address those questions until the very end. So we're going to start off today taking a look at the threat landscape. We're going to explore some of the kind of things that are happening today. We're going to explore some of the things that we're seeing. Joining me today is David. Thank you very much for joining me, David. I'm amazed at the things that are available on the internet today, the things that we find for sale, the things that have been released from breaches that we're being able to access out there in the, not just dark web, but even just regular web today. What are your thoughts on that? David, what are you seeing?
So fascinating. I pulled together a few items here that are readily available for purchase these days, and it just helps highlight how prolific the theft is of data and information from companies these days, and the different types of information that you can readily get your hands on, and frankly, the limited value of that information on the secondary market. So here's an example of a U.S. identity. This is an individual's personal information about who they are, social security number, date of birth. You can see you can acquire this for less than a US $1, so for 99 cents. You can purchase each record there, so get as many as you want. Here's another example of you can actually acquire a US passport for $15, so pretty darn inexpensive. And you get your choice of which identity you want out of the passports that are available as well here, all for that super low cost. can buy a voter database. Okay, here, for less than $10, we can buy entire voter databases from individual regions. Sorry, like somebody put my slide on me there. So you can acquire one of many regional voter databases. It's a little difficult to see on the screen, but some of these databases are very large. The second one has 4.4 million users. The first one has 15 million users. For that same low price of $9.99, you can acquire the entire database. And if you are someone who wants to implement your own attacks, you can actually purchase different, very simple, easy-to-use attacks. Here's an example of a remote access Trojan, commonly known as a RAT, purchasable for $11.44. And there's a whole suite of different types of attacks that you can purchase for this kind of low price point as well. So with all this super readily available in the marketplace, it just sort of reinforces, one, the volume of theft that's going on and the incredibly low prices that are now being attached to all this data and information, and it just reinforces the need for us to continue to strengthen our defenses here and slow the theft down.
Yeah, anecdotally, we find the same things. Our incident response teams find the exact same things. I understand that Carbon Black has done some research, and you guys have put out some official research. Can you share some of those findings with us?
Yeah, so Carbon Black works with a fairly significant number of incident response companies who spend every day, all day, working with companies who have been compromised and breached, to try to nail down and understand the scope of what was lost, the root cause for how that happened, and to ensure that those attacks are shut down. We talk to those folks regularly, and in fact, they regularly help inform us about patterns of attacks, new types of attacks, and things that are being seen on a regular basis. So it provides us a lot of insight, being connected to so many large incident responders into sort of the trends that are happening in the marketplace. So I summarized a little bit of that data here for you. We actually put out a quarterly report that summarizes this data. So if you watch for Carbon Black's quarterly incident response and report, you can keep up with this data as we publish it. Here we highlighted by different industries sort of what the growth in attacks have been. So we've seen some pretty significant growth in some industries that you may expect, some of the more regulated industries where there's a lot of financial and personal data that is stored, in particular financial and healthcare, not surprisingly, are on the top of the list for the continued growth of attacks. Retail as well, given that there's a tremendous amount of both personal and credit card data in the retail industry as well. Maybe more surprising, manufacturing, and we see a ton of attacks in the manufacturing arena where people are looking to steal IP from manufacturing companies, so trade secrets, patents, patented information, designs, drawings, that type of information. Professional services was a little bit of a surprise to me to see that as high as well. And then sort of going slightly down from there, media, entertainment, education. Government was a little lower on the list than I expected because we hear a lot about government attacks, and this might be a bit of a reflection of where the incident response companies play as opposed to what's actually happened in government as well. So maybe surprising to some of you, but maybe not surprising to many of you, just sort of what the breakdown is in the current growth of attacks by different verticals. Here's a chart that shows the origins of the attacks that have been investigated. So it gets a lot of news and media attention around attacks that emanate from Russia and also in China, which made up 50% of all the attacks that were investigated, emanated there. Lots of the other attacks were distributed in many other places. Fairly high number, I didn't list here though, come from North America as well. But the highest penetration is originating from Russia and from China. So just a couple of takeaways from the report beyond this data. So something else that is starting to really be seen in many places, and that is there's a ton of counter-incident response efforts going on by attackers right now. And so what does that mean? That means that as attacks are being recognized by defenders and as they're being shut down, the attackers are actually taking counter techniques or counter methods to fly under the radar, to stay within environments while they're trying to be kept out. And so it's a back and forth. So it's not a one-hit, get shut down, go away, stay away. We're seeing persistent attackers who are making a big effort to watch what the incident responders are doing. So people that are inside your environment, from an attacker perspective, are actually paying attention to what incident responders are doing, learning about incident response techniques, and then trying to thwart those and continue to fly under the radar. 50% of the cyber attacks utilized island hopping techniques, right? So this is becoming more prevalent in the majority of attacks we're starting to see as well. IoT devices are maybe not surprisingly heavily on the rise as far as devices where attackers are looking for weak points. Security in the IoT space in general, I would say, is behind in the marketplace for traditional endpoints, and therefore those are going to be sweet spots for attackers. As mentioned, and to no surprise, the financial industry continues to be the most targeted. Guess what? That's where the money is. And maybe the most depressing statistic of them all is that only 5% of cyber attacks are ever prosecuted. So even as as incident responders get in and as they recognize the origins of these attacks, it's still been very, very difficult to identify the actual attackers and to prosecute them. So it begs the question about where the entry point is for all these attacks, and so let's dig into that a little bit. Walt, maybe you can talk a little bit about how attackers are getting in people's environments these days, where we need to be paying most attention.
Sure. So we see that the endpoint is still the most common entry point for most attacks, more than applications, more than any other way that people can get in. It's still the endpoint. Is what we find as we go out and we do incident response with companies and we see what's happening. The phishing attacks, the email entry point, it's very, very easy for me to find out folks' email addresses and send them phishing attacks, at which point I can get credentials, or I can send them attachments, or send them to websites where I can do drive-by downloads and I can send malware to them. But even more than just malware, we're seeing more and more fileless type of attacks, things that don't require malware, or things that are add-ons to files, so macros and things like that. Once we've landed on the endpoint, though, that's just the beginning, because these attacks aren't point in time. They don't just happen and are over. They're phased, and they happen over several different phases. So usually the next thing that the bad guys are trying to do is to elevate their credentials so that they have more access to more things. They can take advantage of the tools that are already on these endpoints to do what they call live off the land. So I can use scripting tools, I can use PowerShell, I can use the things that are already on these endpoints to propagate my attack behavior. Once I have elevated my credentials and I have credentials that access more types of systems and more types of things, then generally we see some kind of lateral movement. So we end up with more than one endpoint as an entry point. So I had initially an endpoint that was compromised, and oftentimes we see that leads to more compromised endpoints. Eventually, what we're looking for are the goodies, the things that are inside of our databases, those kind of credit card numbers or user credentials or intellectual property or whatever it is. So we end up compromising multiple endpoints, but ultimately we're looking to compromise those servers and databases where the good things are. At which point we've collected all of the data, and this is when the breach happens. That's when we start seeing the outgoing traffic. Oftentimes, they won't send it as they find it. They'll save it all up and send it in one big push, so everything goes out. Oftentimes, we'll also see at this point some kind of secondary infection. So once I'm already making calls out to the intranet, there, then I can do command and control traffic. I can send back other payloads. I can send back other downloads, whatever it is. Oftentimes, what's in those secondary payloads are things that are meant to provide me some kind of persistent access to keep the doors open, so that I don't lose access once I've got it initially. Those kind of remote backdoors and things like that. Additionally, we'll find tools that help us shut down incident response teams more and more. So you talked about the idea that people are doing counter IR or doing evasion to try and circumvent tools or circumvent incident responders or turn off logs, and that oftentimes is kind of the last part of the kill chain. There is they're getting as good at incident response as we're getting at incident response, and they're finding that they can turn down our tools and turn down some of our access to avoid detection, is one of the new hot things that we're finding in the cyber kill chain. So like I said, what we see, oh, go ahead, yeah.
Just sort of interesting statistic here to see of all this response data that we see that this high a number of breaches start with non-malware type attacks. You know, for all the malware that's existed in the world that we spent so much time focused upon, looks like the attackers are sort of figuring out how to bypass that level of protection.
Absolutely. It's an arms race. As we get better at detecting, they get better at evading.
So what are we doing about this? How are organizations approaching the problem then, Walt?
Well, I was going to ask you the same thing. How is Carbon Black seeing that folks are dealing with this problem? I know how Optiv sees, and maybe I can interject some of that, but I'd be really curious to see what are your clients doing about this particular problem?
Yeah, so recognizing that endpoint is sort of the front lines for where we need to begin to protect, and also recognizing that many of the traditional antivirus techniques that have been used for a long, long time have been somewhat ineffective, as represented by the data here. The response to that is that companies have been buying up a ton of other security tools and products to try to protect their environments, but unfortunately have had somewhat a limited increase in efficacy with the addition of those many additional tools. And so what's happened is that while we're trying to lower the compromise, what we've ended up doing is we've increased the cost and the complexity of the environment that we're using to actually secure our organizations. And so instead of now just having an efficacy problem, we have a cost, complexity, and efficacy problem. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. We're seeing the exact same thing, and that really is kind of at the core of my personal job. Is I'm constantly talking to clients about this giant pile of tools that they have to figure out how to make work together, how to make integrate, how to make communicate, how to even keep eyes on. When you look at this slide, that's the giant pile of tools and the amount of tools that folks have. There's more tools than there is manpower, and we don't have enough people to operationalize all these and get anything meaningful out of the outputs of these tools more often than not. And it has just become burdensome, honestly. And it's the biggest problem in security right now is complexity, and we need to figure out how can we reduce that and make some of these solutions more turnkey and more integrated so that we can do more things with less.
So on average, like, how many of these tools are people running?
So I see anywhere from 25, sometimes more, sometimes up to 50. And I'll tell you the worst part of that is these aren't in people who have teams of 25. So when we have 25 and 30 and 50 tools in a place with teams of 3, 5, 10 people, that means that oftentimes these guys have to be the experts of 3, 4, 5, 10 tools, and nobody can really do that, especially for things that you're not in every day. And you have a finite amount of time, and these bad guys just have basically an infinite amount of time.
Yeah, wow, that's putting myself in the seat of a security professional these days. That means my life is going to be pretty challenging to try to manage all these environments. As you look across these tools, many of these tools have their own agents and certainly their own consoles and their own infrastructure that sits behind it all, which means that we have these silos of solutions that aren't necessarily working together as we're trying to harvest the information. So we end up trying to pull data from all these different systems and tools, push it into some sort of data lake, at a minimum push it into a SIM environment, and make sense over what all this data looks like together so we can gain some additional insights. Sounds pretty complex to manage overall across the environment.
Absolutely. It's a challenge for everybody.
Yeah, so in addition to that, with all these agents running on endpoints, I know from our customers prior to working with Carbon Black, people had a tremendous amount of complaints just about the slowdown of performance and just the complexity to manage all the agents that run across these different tools as well. All right, so let's take a look at what we really want to get to here. So we ought to have a new approach to this thing, and the approach we really would like to have here is the ability to run a number of these capabilities all off of a common platform, common console, common agent to help us, 1, reduce the complexity, 2, reduce the performance impact on the individual endpoints, but super importantly, help our IT and security teams make sense of all this data in one place. So as we're solving individual security problems, that we can bring the context that we get from all those products together, and then use that to help us, 1, better understand what's happening in our environment, understand attacks, and then super importantly to very rapidly reach a decision on what needs to be done if an attack wasn't stopped already. Was to make a decision on what we want to do to take action against that attack that's happening.
So what's the solution? At the end of the day, how can Carbon Black help us solve these problems?
Well, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the Carbon Black Predictive Security Cloud. At Carbon Black, we've created a platform that delivers many of the endpoint capabilities, basically everything you need to secure your endpoints, all from a common cloud-delivered platform. Call it the Predictive Security Cloud. On the platform, we offer a number of key capabilities. We offer a next-gen antivirus solution that is equipped to stop all types of attacks. And at the same time, we've layered within that also an endpoint detection and response, or EDR, capability that provides complete visibility into attacks that take place. So even as we stop attacks within your environment, we show you, give you the ability to visualize the full attack chain and see what attackers are doing, how they're approaching entering your organization, what techniques that they're using to do so. And that helps inform your security team and educate your security team so you can hire some more junior people on your teams and they can get educated as CB Defense protects your organization. We also offer a number of additional capabilities. We offer an offering on the Predictive Security Cloud we call Threat Site, and that's a group of Carbon Black's threat experts who can assist teams in the triage and prioritization of alerts. So they focus on the most important things first. Many teams are either short-staffed or lacking the skills and resources that they need, so we bring Carbon Black threat experts to the table to assist when you need them, and we can engage those folks as actively as you need within your organization. On the same platform, we also have a specialized solution for virtualized data center environments. So we worked closely with VMware to architect a joint solution with them that's created to be able to secure large-scale virtual data center environments. Fourth offering we recently introduced on the platform is something we call CB Live Ops. This is a capability that allows both IT and security professionals to query real-time endpoint data on their entire endpoint fleet. So imagine if you were trying to determine whether a particular security vulnerability had been patched across all of your endpoints, or you were looking specifically for software that hadn't been patched for a particular vulnerability. You can run a very simple query. We query all the endpoints in your fleet, bring that data back to the table for you so you can understand where your gaps are in your environment. We can get at specific current state information. For instance, if you're looking for was some remnant left from a prior attack about a particular registry key that might be dwelling within your infrastructure, so you can make specific queries again against either your entire endpoint fleet or groups of endpoints within your fleet as well, and find out very specific real-time current information about what's happening on those endpoints at any given moment. So super powerful tool there. And then lastly, and certainly not but least, is our CB Threat Hunter product, which is a new offering that we've just introduced on the Predictive Security Cloud as well. Some folks on the call may be familiar with our CB Response product, which has been in the market for a number of years, that has been used for incident response and threat hunting. We brought all those super powerful capabilities onto the Predictive Security Cloud. You now have full access to all that data and query and threat intelligence comparisons that we've had available in CB Response for a number of years. Again, all now from the same common platform, common console, common agent as well. Our mission with this platform is really to transform the way we think about security through big data and analytics. And so the basis for this platform is our ability to capture rich endpoint data, store that data in the cloud, and then continuously analyze that data, and ultimately be able to predict what's happening in the threat landscape around the globe, all for the purposes of protecting everybody who's connected to the Predictive Security Cloud. So by processing a massive amount of data in the cloud and then continuously analyzing it with some very specialized techniques, which I'll talk about in a minute, we're able to really increase the level of efficacy in security and controls. So let me walk through that just a little bit. We have a very specific, unique approach in what we're doing in the platform. First, the platform is capable of capturing what we refer to as unfiltered endpoint data. And what I mean by that is when we deploy our single agent on your endpoints, the platform captures continuously every activity that takes place, whether it's good or bad. So while we're actively protecting your endpoints against bad activities, at the same time we're capturing a continuous stream of activity that's taking place, including all the good things that are happening on your endpoints. Why do we do that? Exactly because of what Walt talked about earlier. Attackers today they're living off the land. They're using known good pieces of software. And so when people are running known good software, we would expect that that's a known good activity. However, in many cases, it's actually an attacker who's executing something that we would expect to be known good. So unless we're capturing that activity on a continuing basis, we're not able to see the complete attack chain for what's happening on that endpoint. This is very unique to Carbon Black. Other endpoint providers wait for something bad to happen, and then they start recording, capturing information, which means as a defender, you can only see activity on an endpoint when it was known to be bad, which means you may miss the entry point of an attack when people come in with known good software and they don't do anything malicious for a while, and they're inside your environment doing reconnaissance, living off the land. Other endpoint solutions would not be able to recognize that activity And so using our unfiltered data, we're able to help incident responders and defenders truly understand the attack sequence and where the root cause is of attacks. So we take all that data. The second unique capability we offer is something we call streaming analytics. So streaming analytics is a method that we use to process all this information. Jump ahead a slide here for a moment. Talk about streaming analytics. So we take this data that we capture and we process it through over time. And so what we're doing is we're looking at sequences of events or sequences of behaviors that take place over time, and we're looking for behaviors that begin to appear suspicious and then ultimately those that appear malicious, and we stop those and shut those down. But we do that by watching a continuous view of these sequences of events over time. That's super powerful. So it means that we're not waiting for one bad thing to happen or one bad event or one bad activity. We can actually see the sequence of activities as something's going bad, as people are moving laterally within your organization, as people are trying to do counter-incident response as well. We can put the pieces together and then assess that risk, alert you to it, and then show it to you so you actually see what's happening in that environment. Turns out streaming analytics is not a new idea. This is actually a technique that's been used in fraud detection for a number of years. And so we sort of look at the difference in results for what the fraud detection industry, and I'm sure many of you have received or had your credit cards closed out based on some sort of fraudulent activity. The way that's been done in the financial services industry is exactly this way. They are true watching patterns of behavior. They see what you do normally, and then we see patterns of behavior that fall outside the normal patterns they would expect from you. So some transactions taking place in a place that you're not, then they'll flag that and they'll shut down activity as well. Very significant 20% decrease in fraud based on those techniques. By applying those techniques in the security industry, significantly improve the ability for us to stop attacks as well. So it turns out collecting all this unfiltered data, because it's a massive amount of data, is pretty difficult, and it's why that Carbon Black uniquely is the only endpoint vendor in the industry that's able to capture this level of detail to help you understand and stop and investigate attacks. And so we've built some very specialized technology. It took us about 10 years to develop all this technology and how to capture and transmit that information effectively without impacting networks and endpoints themselves, and then process all that data in the cloud. Just for some scale, we process about 200 terabytes of data today. That incorporates about 500 billion security events per day, which is a little difficult to even grasp what the scale of that is.
Yeah, that's an enormous number. It's hard to fathom the size of that data. How are you guys doing that?
Yeah, so that's that sort of specialized stuff that we built over the last 10 years and be able to amass all that information. Just a little scale on that thing. So iMessage, we process about 13 times as many events as iMessage does every day. So about 40 billion messages a day from iMessage. And just for some more scale, Google searches, you'd think that there's got to be a ton of Google searches done every day, but we process about 150 times as many events as Google does every day, about 1,000 times the number of events as Twitter publishes every day, about 110 times the amount of data that VirusTotal processes. So the scale of our operation is very, very significant, and that's only possible in the cloud. So part of our approach to this problem is that we must leverage the resources that are in the cloud to be able to do this. So this nets out to us having the best data in the security industry, best endpoint data, and when we capture, in the context of all this data, in addition to all this unfiltered telemetry that we capture, about what's actually happening on each endpoints. We're also looking at TTP-based behaviors, which is how our prevention technology works. So this is us actually looking at the tactics, techniques, and procedures that attackers are using, and being able to spot those techniques to be able to stop those behaviors. I talked a little bit about live ops earlier, and there we're capturing live endpoint data or current state data that's on the endpoints as well. And then something I didn't speak of at all yet, but we have the largest repository of known good software in the Predictive Security Cloud as well. And what that means is that you can test software reputation. So part of our prevention technology takes a look at what pieces of software aren't running, and then we check them against our software reputation database and make a determination whether those are known to be good software or not good software as well. So all this comes together and provides a tremendous amount of intelligence and powerful analytics that drive all the rest of our solutions and technology. You might be asking yourself, can I get my hands on all that data? Because, gee, that seems valuable. And turns out you can. We have created a set of open APIs that allow full access to all the information that's captured. So as you protect your organization, it's your data. And so while Carbon Black uses that data to protect your individual endpoints, you also have access to that data to provide additional context into many of your other security products in your security stack. Carbon Black integrates with more security products than any other vendor in the industry. And accordingly, we have pre-built integrations that exist for virtually every major security product that exists. Notably, most of those integrations, by the way, were built by the other security vendors because the data that we have is so valuable and can help provide context and additional value out of their tools as well. And then we provide those open APIs, so if you want to extend our technology yourself so you can gain access to that data, either build additional workflow, build management dashboards, reporting sorts of things as well, so you have ready access to all of the data through those APIs as well.
That's a great list of pre-built integrations there. That's the who's list of solutions that we're seeing out there in the field anyway, as far as the things that I'm talking to clients about every day. It's Palo Alto, it's Fortinet, it's Checkpoint. So that's a spectacular list of things that are real world integrations, and it goes to what I was talking about earlier about the need to kind of consolidate down that insane list of controls that we're trying to utilize and make them operationalize together. So that lines right up with what we're seeing out in the world.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. So while one of our objectives is to help consolidate the endpoint security stack, so basically take the different technologies that people regularly apply to their endpoints and consolidate those down to a single platform. We, of course, don't consolidate every other security product in the industry, but we do eliminate the need for some of the other security products like FIM and FIX solutions aren't really required when you use our technology because we have such deep visibility into what's happening with the file systems. We automatically monitor those solutions. So there's a number of other products that you may be running that you would have no longer need to run. And then if you're running multiple endpoint products as well, we can consolidate those endpoint products down to a single agent-driven platform through the Predictive Security Cloud too. So let's take a look at how this translates into value. So we talked a lot about problems and technology, but well, let's get back to how this actually helps your organization stay more secure. So from a protection standpoint, the net of it is with using Carbon Black, you're going to stop more attacks. And I'd love to be able to say, as with every security vendor, that that our solution stops every attack that will ever happen to you. And the reality is that that's never going to happen for anybody's security. But we will stop all types of attacks. we will stop not only known attacks, but we also stop unknown attacks. And maybe just worth making a brief comment about that. Because of the technique that we're using, because of this behavioral analytics, we don't need to know about attacks that have happened in the past. We're able to detect when things go south or go malicious or go suspicious based on those behavioral patterns. And that's very, very different than signature-based approaches. And even you hear a lot about machine learning these days. Even machine learning approaches are really about helping people detect bad actors who are disguising themselves. So machine learning is really about taking little small changes to typically file-based attacks and keeping up with those. But with this behavioral approach, we're able to go after everything from every type of ransomware, and notably when ransomware first started happening, Carbon Black was all over that because we could detect that those behaviors when someone went to encrypt your drive, that using even then some known good software, that wasn't a normal thing that should be happening on your machine. And we're able to stop those attacks and approaches. But as the attackers continue to get creative and they come up with new methods of going after our machines, it's that behavioral approach or that behavioral analytics approach that's going to be able to recognize those and stop those. We do protect your endpoints even though we're cloud-based. We protect your endpoints whether they're online or offline. So our agent technology is kept current from our cloud while you're connected. When you disconnect, we'll continue to be active. When you reconnect, we go through a process where anything that we've captured for activities while you were offline, we then throttle and stream up to the cloud so that you have ready access to that too, so you don't lose visibility to activities and actions that have taken place on endpoints even when they're offline. You'll have all that centralized and at your fingertips as well. Talked a little bit about unknown threats. The other thing that's important about our approach is that you get visibility early in the attack lifecycle. One of the biggest things that we hear about all the time is that attackers end up dwelling in the infrastructure for fairly long periods of time before they're detected or stopped because they're not really doing things that are determined to be malicious by other endpoint solutions. And because of our behavioral approach, we see suspicious activities earlier on and flag those and inform you of those activities earlier in the process. Interestingly, many organizations they wait and they want to watch what attackers are doing, and they let them continue to dwell in their environment so they can learn more about their attack patterns. And so this is something that more of the higher-end organizations are doing these days, who really want to understand how attackers are specifically going after them and what techniques that they're using. So you have that ability. If you don't want to stop something when you determine it's suspicious and not malicious, you could be just kept informed about it and learn from that so you understand the attackers better and then choose to stop them when you're ready to do so. Visibility. So with all this data, you can imagine that you get a ton of visibility that you just otherwise wouldn't have. And so because we have the ability to capture everything that's happening on all your endpoints, you can now very, very quickly and easily go in and see exactly what attack patterns look like, where they started, and you can, fundamentally you can get back to the root cause of where the attacker entered your environment, and then try to close those gaps accordingly. As Walt pointed out earlier, phishing attacks continue to be pretty prolific, and our entry points along the way. When those phishing attacks are executed, we will, in almost all cases, stop those attacks because most of them play off known good software along the way. But it's good to know where those are coming from so you can go back and try to inform and train your users. More diligent there as well. With the visibility that we have as well, it helps us help you by getting more insights about the types of threats that are happening. Whether you choose to use Carbon Black experts, it's an option. With our platform, it's not required. Our tools are extremely effective without any Carbon Black experts being involved. And I'll just point out that some other, even some other next-gen cloud vendors in the industry are really dependent on their people to be watching over your environment all the time because their technology doesn't work that good. And that's simply not the case with Carbon Black. Our technology is super, super powerful and will stop the majority of attacks. I'll make a note, I don't have it in my slide presentation here, but MITRE just ran a very important set of testing, third-party industry testing of security products in the marketplace, and Carbon Black performed the absolute best at stopping attacks, detecting. This was really about detection, not stopping, sorry, but detecting the most different attacks and attack types over all others in the industry without people in the loop. So we call that without humans in the loop. So the technology by itself has the best detection, and that's proven out by the current MITRE results as well. And then finally, Carbon Black, and I haven't talked a lot about this, we have a powerful set of what we call live response or remediation tools built into the product. Take a look at how most organizations remediate issues. It involves taking the security team, having them work together with the IT teams to gain access to the affected endpoints, to either gather additional forensics data using IT. All that's built into the platform, and so it really reduces the amount of effort that's required by the IT organization because we empower the security team to have direct access to all the data that's available on those endpoints. And I know you're probably thinking like, oh, I don't want them to have full access, and we do have rules-based access control, so you can govern who has access to what. You can be careful with that. But we provide the power for you to be able to provide your security teams with immediate and direct access to all of your endpoints, and to be able to go into those machines and laser-focused remediate issues, in many cases without the end user even knowing that security team is doing something on their machine. So Carbon Black may detect something that's happening on the machine. Security person may go into it using our live response tool and may either ban some specific or kill some specific process that's happening on one endpoint, or to make a broader decision to ban some piece of known malicious activity across your entire fleet as well. So we have very powerful response capabilities, which, by the way, are exposed in all of our products. So because response is such an important part of the entire security activity, we make that available across our entire product line. Last, notably, around visibility is we work hard to bring the entire community of people that are using Carbon Black products and technologies together. So well over 15,000 security practitioners regularly participate and contribute in our community, and the value of that is they're constantly sharing new threat insights, new techniques, new ideas, educating each other and sharing information to try to continue to strengthen your team. So in addition to Carbon Black helping you with our experts, you get the benefit of leveraging our massive community as well. And then finally, to talk a little bit about Simplified Operations, because we're a cloud-based solution, deployment is very fast and easy. Instead of deploying in days, weeks, and months, you can deploy in hours. We recently spun up a very, very large implementation of several 100,000 endpoints over the course of just about a week. And so we're ability to deploy very, very fast because there's no infrastructure, there's no management, you have nothing to update, so you're not updating regularly as well. We take care of all that for you. And all we basically have to do is work with you to agree upon what policies you want to customize. We offer a complete out-of-the-box policy, so you can just get up and running day one. But if you do want to customize, you have the ability to do that as well. We're constantly auto-updating your defenses, so you don't have to distribute any signature databases or anything, so that doesn't burden your infrastructure. We take care of all that for you in the cloud as well. We're always up to date on the most current threats. Part of having this massive database means that we're aware of things as they emerge around the world, and so we automatically make sure that our software is able to prevent those or detect them as needed. And then you get access to whatever the net new capabilities and features are of the product, again, because it's a cloud-based solution as soon as they're released. And then finally, we provide integration with your enterprise infrastructure as well, so Active Directory, and other core infrastructure within your enterprise is all built in. And then we have pre-built integrations, as I mentioned earlier, with lots of tools that you'll probably already running. And you can do the customizations if you want using our open APIs. And then lastly, number 4, for unifying your defenses, with our pre-built integrations, 2 things are happening there. The first is that we're sharing this rich data with these other security products, which provide them context. But the other thing that we're doing is we're exposing remediation APIs. So live response that I talked about a couple minutes ago, that allows you to go in and remediate issues. So those are also available through APIs. So other tools can trigger remediation activities. If you realize that you have some other threat and you want to fire off an activity either directly to a specific endpoint, or if you want to do something broader and ban something across your fleet, you have the ability to do that or invoke that remotely from another system as well. From a value standpoint, you're going to get more from your other tools when you plug them into Carbon Black along the way. A good example of that would be your orchestration tools. So if you're running any of the automated orchestration tools that help larger SecOps teams manage and orchestrate their defenses, you can now trigger and initiate actions and activities directly from those tools, which makes those tools that much more powerful as well. And then you can also drill down and visualize attacks, and so as you're doing investigations and you're using other tools and technologies to do that, you get ready access into the rich detail that Carbon Black provides you as well. We talked about net new workflows already, a little bit about dashboards and other things that you might want to do. So that's my story. So Walt, that's what we have to offer in our Predictive Security Cloud. Net, when you run our technology, you'll get superior protection. We'll decrease the risk in your organization. The visibility we give you is actionable, and so it will allow you to investigate faster and remediate faster. Your operations will be simplified, as in no infrastructure to manage and stand up anymore. You have unlimited scale to the amount of data that you capture and the processing power that sits behind it. And then finally, the ability to unify all your defenses together using all of our pre-built integrations and open APIs is unmatched in the industry.
Those are 4 fantastic benefits. I heard a theme that seemed to run through all 4 of them too, and that's that Carbon Black is acting as a force multiplier for clients' teams. So whether it's not having to download and deal with updates for my AV, or it's being able to leverage your team to help triage my incident response, or through reduced overhead, administrative overhead from having to run the actual tool, or minimizing the complexity between my tools, it's really a great force multiplication to help teams with limited manpower or resource constraints. So those are 4 really spectacular benefits. I'm really impressed. Following on this, I know there will be some ways for the folks out there to interact with both Optiv and Carbon Black, to ask some additional questions, to access this webinar, to be able to access resources, download white papers, etc., and all that stuff will follow on. Right now it's Q&A time. We still have a few minutes left. Mindy, do we have any questions out there? Has anybody asked us questions yet?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you both. That was a really awesome presentation and webinar. So I just want to send a quick reminder to our audience that you can submit your questions into the Q&A chat box. It looks like we've got a couple in, so let's just get going with the time we have. Okay, question 1. If I use this to replace my existing AV solution, will it meet my PCI compliance requirements?
Great question, and the answer to that is yes. We have worked with Coalfire, a third-party independent firm, to certify the product with PCI compliance. And so, yep, Carbon Black's a great solution to help you there.
Absolutely, and I can second that and say that it doesn't even require compensating control written. It fits right into that PCI requirement.
Okay, let's see. I already use protection and response. Can I use this together with those?
Yep, great question. So just a quick clarification. So Carbon Black also sells a couple other products. One is called Cb Protection, which is an application control and whitelisting solution. And Carbon Black also sells a product called Cb Response, which is a threat hunting incident response product. I mentioned earlier that Cb Threat Hunter is now brings all the rich capabilities of Cb Response onto the Predictive Security Cloud. We have many customers who run Cb Response together with the Predictive Security Cloud who have been longtime Cb Response customers in the past. So if you are an existing Cb Response customer, yes, you can definitely take advantage of any of the other capabilities that are available on the Predictive Security Cloud. You may also choose to, over time, move your incident response and threat hunting capabilities from Cb Response onto the Predictive Security Cloud and utilize Cb Threat Hunter there as well. Cb Protection, application control, we don't yet offer the capabilities of Cb Protection on the Predictive Security Cloud. It is something that we plan to do in the future, so it is on our roadmap. But you certainly can utilize the power of the Predictive Security Cloud in addition to Cb Protection, and many of our customers already do today.
Great. Okay, last couple questions. Do I need to add more security analyst manpower to take advantage of this? And what is the average time it takes your clients to deploy this and get it running?
I'll take those two questions separately. So, well, I'll actually answer the last one first, and then I'll answer the first one. So to get it up and running, hours, if you're a small organization, you literally will be up and running over the course of hours, so 1 or 2 days, and you'll be up and ready to go. We have small companies who are literally up and running in an afternoon. If you're a large company, you may roll out in a more structured fashion. For our very, very large deployments, most organizations roll out in smaller chunks of endpoints, so they'll roll out 10,000 or 50,000 endpoints at a time, and then eventually scale up to several 100,000 endpoints within their environment. So that could take place over the course of a number of days. Back to the security personnel. So let's talk about two types of personnel, IT personnel and security personnel. You will now have the capability to do more with Carbon Black technology. So you'll have the ability to do more in shorter periods of time in your SecOps teams, which means that investigations that used to take hours or days or weeks, you'll likely be able to do in minutes now. So the efficiency of your SecOps team will go way up when you utilize the Predictive Security Cloud. That said, because you now have access to all these capabilities, you may want to apply additional people to take advantage and utilize the resources that are here. So out of the box, you're going to save a ton of time and resources, but it's an enabling technology, so you may want to put it in the hands of more people in your organization to give them more visibility into actually what's happening. On the IT front, you will spend less time typically in the IT world because you have less to manage. Because it's a turnkey solution offered in the cloud, there's no IT infrastructure to set up and manage along the way. There's no signature databases to make sure that are updated and current. So you should spend less cycles from an IT perspective when you're running the solution. Oh, and one last thing that's super important is you'll be doing less re-imaging if you re-image today, if you spend time re-imaging as a way to take care of affected machines or infected machines. Because of Carbon Black's live response capability where you can laser into individual machines and take care of issues, no longer will people have to give up their laptops, mail them back to IT, re-image them, and get them sent back. all that gets taken care of in a matter of minutes directly from the security teams. That certainly will save a bunch of time.
Awesome. And then our last question, we'll just wrap up with this one. How does Optiv assist with the Cb Predictive Cloud?
Sure, so I'll take that one. So Optiv can assist in lots of ways. So Optiv really does all things security, kind of soup to nuts. So whether it's helping you design, vet, install, manage, run your Carbon Black solutions, we can help with all of those things. So if you were interested in taking a look at Carbon Black, we can help you do your POCs, we can help you design your solutions, but we can also run them as a managed service or help you do assessments against them. So basically anything that you would want to do with Carbon Black, Optiv will be able to help you manage it, run it, utilize it from a day-to-day perspective. So I think that's it for us. That brings us to the top of the hour.
Yeah, yep. So thank you both. That was really awesome. And thank you to our audience. This concludes today's webinar. A follow-up email is going to be sent to you shortly, which will include a link to review today's webinar along with those additional resources. So thank you all so much for participating and have a great day.